Hey folks, and welcome back to West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. Things are heating up in the transfer window now, and Leeds United are running out of time to get suitable players in, and I'm a bit worried, I ain't gonna lie. What started out as what was seemingly a reasonable looking transfer window for Leeds, it's starting to kind of fizzle out. And this is contrary to what the Leeds United chairman Parag Marath said, that the majority of the business would be done towards the end of the window rather than, earlier on. So let's just have a quick look at the ins and the outs and what could happen over these next few days. I did go through the transfers in on one of my previous videos actually, so I've literally just copied the exact same column there. These are all approximate figures, but roughly speaking, 19 million for Noah Okafor, 17 million for Anton Stack, 16 million for Jakob Biol, 15 million for Lucas Perry, 12 million for Sean Longstaff, 11 million for Gabriel Gudmundsson, 8 million for James Justin, 5 million for Sebastian Bornau, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Lucas Metcher in on free transfers, which again approximately totals about £103 million spent so far. In terms of players that have left, Joshua Gilavogi's contract came to an end. That was only a short-term contract when he signed anyway. Sam Greenwood has been sold to Pogon for approximately £2 to £3 million. Patrick Bamford has had his contract terminated through mutual consent or mutual agreement. Max Verber has gone out on loan, Matteo Joseph's gone out on loan, Joe Gallart's gone out on loan, Isaac Schmidt's gone out on loan, and Largi Ramazani has gone out on loan. So this kind of leaves the squad in a situation where we definitely need a midfielder now, and I would use the loan market for this, because originally I think Farke had decided that he's got enough midfield cover, but he is now down from 5 midfielders to 3, and if we are going to play a 4-3-3/4-5-1 formation, that ain't going to cut it. There's no depth. So if we play with 3 midfielders, they are the only 3 that we've got fit right now, because Ampadu and Tanaka are injured. So we definitely need somebody that can step in and do a job. Now, to me it would be a little bit of a no-brainer to bring Calvin Phillips in on loan if he can pass a medical. You bring Phillips in like how we brought Gilavogi in. You bring him in as a backup. If he's fit enough and if he can pass the medical. Now, as far as I'm aware, he's just had an operation this summer. So while it would not be an immediate player that could simply step in, he would need a bit of time to get fit, and this is probably why Farke will not consider Calvin Phillips, because anyone that Farke brings in now needs to be ready, or at least fit enough to at least make the bench. Calvin's going to need a couple of weeks at least to get into team training and to get his fitness up. But just on the basis that, you know, he knows the club inside out, he can play DCM, CM and ACM. He's played in all three throughout his career, from youth level up to senior level. I know this because I've seen it, because I saw him play for the under-18s, I saw him play for the under-21s, and I've seen him play senior football. And he's played in all three of those positions in his time. So I know he can do it. And you know that he'd give his all. You know, you're not kind of wondering what are you going to get from Calvin Phillips if he was to return to Leeds United. You just know that he would, you know, he'd play for the badge, he'd play with his heart on his sleeve, all this kind of stuff. The big question regarding Calvin Phillips is he fit enough? And that's where the issue comes into it. I'm amazed that Man City haven't done with Phillips what Leeds have just done with Bamford, and that they haven't just simply terminated his contract and let him go out on a free, because he's never going to be in Guardiola's plans. And then, you know, because in that situation, you know, you get players that get released on a free and then they go and train with clubs. They don't necessarily sign a contract, but they train with clubs for a while. And if they get into a level of fitness that's acceptable, then the club can offer him a contract, and they can get him on a free, and they can just about sign him. You know, I think you can sign a free transfer pretty much any time. The only downside is getting players in on a registration in time. That's the you know, that's the hit and miss side of it. So, you know, a lot of people might see Phillips as being a, you know, he's not the Phillips of old, so we shouldn't get him. Not going to be fit enough, etc. But if anything, he's more experienced now than he were back then. I think he's 28, 29 now, so he fits the, and he's about 5'10", 5'11", so he's you know, he's got that physical side to him that would suit, you know, Leeds United and the 49ers and Daniel Farke. So yeah, it's a long shot, and I can't really think of too many other central midfielders at this moment in time. There's been talks of players like Brownhill and Hamer, and I'm like, these are champion, you know, the top end championship level players, but ultimately they are championship level players. We need to be bringing in players that are Premier League level, or as near as bloody damn it. So I like, for me, Calvin Phillips ticks enough boxes, you know, especially if it's on loan, or if Man City, you know, and Calvin agree to a mutual termination to allow Leeds then to offer Phillips a contract and get him in at Leeds on a free. Because I mean, again, you know, if that was to happen, Phillips would have to take a wage cut. But again, it's like, you know, what means more to Phillips right now? Playing football, earning millions of pounds, whatever. I don't know. You'd have to ask him. But with everything he's been through over the last 2 or 3 seasons, I just wonder if Leeds is the place to come back to. You know, he'd be in the Premier League again. How many Premier League moves is Calvin Phillips going to get in his career at this stage now? Possibly not many, so why not come back to the club where it started for him? Earlier on in the transfer window, I was really hoping we'd get Milner, just for his experience. He's still fit as a bloody butcher's dog, isn't he? But Brighton offered him another 1 year deal, didn't they? So that was annoying. I really wanted Milner back, because that you can't kind of replicate that amount of sheer experience at top level, can you? So for me, that would have been an obvious one for me earlier on in the window, but obviously that didn't come to pass in the end. Moving on to the right wing now. Obviously, we brought in Noah Okafor, who has obviously been brought in to be, competition on the left wing, and with Ramazani now going out, and what seems to be that we're integrating Jack Harrison back into the team, it kind of makes you wonder as to. I mean, I don't think because we've got Nonto as well, so I genuinely don't think they're going to bring anyone else on the left side. And obviously Nonto can play right side, but then also on the right side you've got Dan James. But we haven't brought in a brand new right winger. And I said at the start of the transfer window, Leeds need the equivalent of a new starting 11. Not necessarily an 11 that's going to start every week, but one where if they did eventually all gel together, that you could potentially play them all in a startable 11, whether it be 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever, 4-5-1, etc. Christ, bring back 4-4-2. I'm kind of joking on that because nobody ever plays 4-4-2 anymore. But anyway, so on the right wing, there's one or two possibilities that have been mentioned here, there, and everywhere. But if you're looking at some real quality, someone that's highly experienced at an extremely good level, have a look at Nico Gonzalez. Right winger, fully fledged Argentina international. I think he's got close to 50 caps for Argentina. Plays for Juventus. A Serie A powerhouse. Now, it might take a bit more than 20 million. It might be nearer 25. I don't know. I didn't look into how much Juventus got Gonzalez for in the first place. But as Farke once said, he said that the players that create chances and the players who score the chances are always going to cost more money. And as you can see on the graphic there, we've spent roughly, just over £100 million. If we assume that PSR is going to allow us to spend approximately £150 million, bearing in mind that we're not paying the wages of any of those players in that blue column with the green right, or as far as I know. Gilavogi and Greenwood wouldn't have been on huge contracts anyway. Bamford was on a sizable contract of roughly £65,000 to £70,000 a week. And we have to assume that the more established players in that green column with the blue writing, we have to assume that some of those, certainly not all of them, but some of them are going to be on similar contracts to what Bamford's been on. Having said that, the club, a little while ago, did say that going back up to the Premier League, we would be paying players less than what they were on the last time that they were in the Premier League. Hence why the contract offered to Firpo was rumoured to be less than what he was on before. So, again, when you go back to when we had Rodrigo Moreno, he was on 99 grand a week. Bamford was in second place on 70 grand a week. You know, they were the two biggest earners at the club. You know, with Harrison coming back into the team, you know, we're paying all of his wages again now. He'll be on a reasonable amount because he'd only signed a relatively new deal to convert his loan into a permanent deal, and that was only about one season before he then swanned off on loan. So when you think of the current squad, and even with those players that have gone out, you know, Bamford on the newly reduced terms as we got promoted would have been on around 60 to 65 grand a week. Verba, he'll have been on a fair whack. Austrian international, you know, he'll have been on, I reckon, 40 to 50. Don't think Joseph would have been on a right lot, or Gellart, because you know they're both relatively young, so I don't think either of those will be on a huge whack. Schmidt, he was got whilst we were in the Championship, and was got from the Swiss League. So I don't see Schmidt being on a right lot, maybe 20. Ramazani, okay, he was bought for a bit more, you know, a bit more of a chunk of change. You know, he was bought for like 7 million, rising up to 9 million with add-ons or something. But again, being in the Championship when we got him, I can't see him being on more than maybe 30. I don't know this for sure. This is just me guessing. So with that, if we assume that all of the wages have been covered with these loans, so Rabazani on roughly 30, Schmidt on 20, so that's 50, Gellart 20 maximum, so that's 70, Joseph 20, so that's 90, Verba 50, so about 140, 210 with Bamford, 200 maybe, and then about 20 with Greenwood, so 220, and then Gillavoge, he can't have been on more than about 10, I don't think, so probably. So you know, we're looking at about £250,000 a week that we've let go. But all of that will have been taken up by the 10 players that we've brought in, and more, comfortably more. So to try and bring in someone like Nico Gonzalez is going to cost a lot of wages as well as a big transfer fee. So, you know, is there enough wiggle room with PSR? You know, with releasing approximately £250,000 a week or thereabouts, with those players in the middle column there, and with bringing in a little bit of money, you know, with the sale of Greenwood, but that's the only sale. You know, all of the rest of these are loans. So unless we've charged a loan fee, which, you know, realistically you're not going to get more than £1 million for each of those loan fees. So as a maximum, you've got 3 million roughly for the Greenwood transfer, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've made no more than £8 million in terms of either transfer or loan fees out, and then a saving of roughly, let's say, up to a maximum of £250,000 a week. All of that, to me, it sounds to me like all of that has already been taken up by the 10 players that we've brought in. I think this is partially the reason why we brought in Calvert-Lewin and Metcher. They were both on free transfers. So then you're only looking at the wages. I think that's why we brought in the likes of Bornau and Justin, because you know, they're relatively low in terms of expenditure, 5 million and 8 million. And again, unlike Sunderland, who have splashed out 30 million on a 21-year-old midfielder, okay, you could argue that they've made some sales as well. Watson went for about 10 million, didn't he? Bellingham went for about 20 odd. Again, like Xhaka's wages, he must be on a fair old bloody chunk, surely. Who knows? But either way, look at what Nottingham Forest did. They broke PSR rules, got a tiny slap on the wrist, and they've got European football now, because with buying about 50 odd bloody players, and then keeping the best 25 out of those 50, they've been able to get a very established Premier League squad now. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that Leeds should go and break the rules, but if we break PSR rules by a very small amount, then you would expect the punishment to not be all that big, all being well. Then again, this is Leeds, we always get punished, don't we? So I just feel that now we've got the new goalkeeper, we've got a new back line, we've brought in 2 midfielders and 1 winger, just to name a few. We've brought in a couple of strikers, but they're on free transfer. So it's like, we need now to just finish this transfer window with some quality, and this is where we just kind of splash out a little bit, not for the sake of splashing out, but just to bring in some real top quality that's going to help us stay in this flipping division. We don't want Championship football again. And any Leeds fan that says that they want to go back down to Championship, they need to give their head a bloody wobble. I'm sorry, right? We want to be in the Premier League again. We don't want to get bollocked 5-0 by Arsenal, right? I very rarely swear on these videos, but at the end of the day, teams like Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, they've got established squads that have had millions and millions and millions of pounds spent on them over the last decade at least. Leeds are having to compete with that with one summer transfer window. You know what I mean? It ain't possible. So they've just got to do the best that they can. But we've brought in what on paper looks like a list of reasonable players. Now we need to top it off with a couple of real good quality players. If it takes us up to PSR limit, fine. Marath came out and said we will push the PSR limit to the very last penny. Leeds' owner said that. Leeds' chairman said that. So we're going to find out, aren't we? Over these next few days, we are going to find that out. So yeah, for me, if it's financially possible, and medically possible, I'd get Phillips in on loan, Gonzalez in on for the right wing, and then up front it'd be Artem Dovbyk. Now, there's a slight issue with Dovbyk in the sense that he's not been at Roma all that long, I don't think. Similar situation with Burkhardt, who would have been another possibility. He went from Mainz to Frankfurt recently. And again, I think we missed a trick there. If we'd have been able to get Burkhardt before he made that move from Mainz to Frankfurt, I think we'd have had a bloody good striker coming in there. But Farke was adamant that he wanted to sort out the defence of the midfield before sorting out the attack. And in this business, if you snooze, you lose, and that is a fact. So Dovbyk could be an option. Demirovic is another option that his scoring record's not quite as good as Dovbyk's. But again, for players like this, you're looking at a minimum of £30 million. I think Dovbyk went to Roma for €30 million. So they'd want at least 30, probably £35 million. I've put 30 million as a like a minimum benchmark. Same with the 20 million for Nico Gonzalez. And I did a video not so long ago about possible attacking players that Leeds could maybe realistically look at. Because again, if we can't get Nico Gonzalez, then there's the possibility of maybe trying to get Orsolini from Bologna. He got 15 goals in 30 games last season on the right wing. Could he be an option? I'm no professional football scout. I'm just literally going off the G&A that players got last season in their respective leagues. We attempted to get Paixão, and if Marseille hadn't buttered him, we'd have had him, and we'd have got him instead of Okafor. Okafor was the second choice for left wing. I mean, we got a little taste of what Okafor could do when he played for AC Milan against Leeds. It looked like one of Milan's best players. But bear this in mind: he was their second choice left winger after Rafael Leao, who's a flipping Brazilian international. The club did a very good job of scouting Rafinha when we got him for 17 million a few seasons ago. But that type of player doesn't seem to be. There's not several Rafinhas around here, and look at where he's ended up. He's ended up going to Barcelona, and he's one of their better players. To get this kind of quality is very, very difficult to get. So for me, if we could bring in Phillips, Gonzalez, and Dovbyk, then that, on top of all the other players we've got, that to me looks like a pretty good transfer window. Now, we've looked at players like El Canouse. I mean, I'm not struck on that, and he's left-sided anyway, so we're not going to get him now because we've got Okafor. There's rumours going around that we're looking at Buonanotte from Brighton on loan. He doesn't fit the mould that the 49ers have been looking at. He's only 20 or 21 year old. I know they're looking at it as a loan signing, but when you look at what Leeds have been bringing in so far, it's a weird one. So I don't know what to think about that one. I mean, all fans will have to start singing Bella Notte from Lady and the Tramp, won't they? If they're going to give him a bloody chant if he comes to the club, so that'll be cheesy. But all giggles aside, is he what we need right now? I think we need players that are going to be able to do the business straight away. He's a kid. I just feel like we need the experience. In terms of possible players going out, I mean, there was rumours that we'd probably get rid of Aronson and Harrison, and Farke has literally said in his press conference today that he's not looking to get rid of either of those. So we would have to assume then that on the wings he's got Nonto and Harrison to back up Okafor, or to compete with Okafor, whichever way you look at it. They obviously see Harrison as a possible backup fullback as well where required. And then with Aronson, they're playing him on the right wing, which I guess is possibly a slightly better position for him than the central role that he had last season. But again, you've got these rules, haven't you? You've got these rules that you can only register 25 players that are over the age of 21-year-old. Now, this might be one of the reasons that they're looking at Buonanotte, because he ain't over that age yet. And if they get him in on loan, it's a low cost kind of deal, on the basis they've already spent over 100 million already. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know what's going through the minds of the ownership at Leeds right now. But if we are to believe Parag Marath in his words, where he said that we will spend every available penny that the club has on transfer fees and wages, right up to the very last minute of the transfer window, and pushing PSR right up to the maximum penny. If we believe that, because it's all very well him saying that we'll do that, but then actually doing it, this is an actions speak louder than words moment. We've spent under £20 million on every single player that we've brought in so far, to allow us to be able to get more players in. But have we gone down a quantity over quality route here? In terms of, realistically, in terms of other players leaving the club at this moment in time, the only one that I can think of is Meslier. Because Mellier's not going to get ahead of Perry, and because Darlow played in the Cup, I cannot see a future for Meslier at Leeds right now. We bought him for £5 million. If we sell him, I think it's rumoured that the club are looking to get at least 5 or 6 back, so that we don't make any loss, and that makes sense. And I think that I honestly think that if a club got Meslier for £6 million, I think they're getting a good deal there. I still think Meslier is a good goalkeeper, and give him a couple more years, and he'll actually get better, and he'll actually be very good. But Mellier's in the past now, whichever way you look at it. So Meslier, to me, I think is the only one I can think of that would end up being included in that middle column. You may as well keep Darlow and Keynes. They help with the homegrown quota. And then obviously, Perry's come in as the number one choice. So that makes sense enough. But then after that, you can't really get rid of anyone, can you? At right back you've got Bogle and Justin. At left back you've got Gudmundsson and Byram. You've let Schmidt go, so there's no other surplus fullbacks. Defenders, you've got Bornau and Rodon right centre back. You've got Biol and Strauch left centre back. You had Verber, and he's gone out on loan. You've got no other surplus centre backs. Midfield. I mean, we didn't have any surplus midfield. I mean, there might be, if it hadn't been for the fact that Ampadu and Tanaka got injured, I wonder if Gruev might have been seen as a make way to free up some wages and maybe get a few million quid in to allow another midfielder to come in. Maybe, I don't know. But with the injuries to Ampadu and Tanaka, you can't afford to let Gruev go now, because we don't have anyone else after after the two of those, Longstaff and Stack. It's such a difficult situation, is this? The limit of 25 players is a bit of a ball ache, for clubs that really need, the squad depth. When you get clubs like bloody Chelsea, for example, that have a massive pool of players, they buy so many players and then farm them all out on loan, don't they? And yet players that don't make the 25, the rest of them are all shipped out on loan. But they've always got a squad on the book of about 50 senior players, about another 50 players that could qualify for, for the under 21s and under 18s. It's bloody balmy. So I think there are flaws in the rules, but ultimately with this, with the state of the squad, I don't know if it was worth getting Calvert-Lewin and Metcher, because the wages that those two are on combined, could they not have gone towards getting someone like a Dobbik or a Demirovic or a Burkhardt before he left for Frankfurt? Because these boys are going to want big wages. Gonzalez is another. Quality players want big contracts. So I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know the financial side of things. But ultimately, Leeds need to make some moves now. They've got about 4 or 5 days. They've got to get in some quality now. And it concerns me that I've heard rumours that we're only going to bring in one more player. And that player is likely to be a player that can cover both right wing and a 10. This then comes down to tactics. Are we going to use the 10 position? We're not playing 4-4-2. We're not playing 4-2-3-1. We're playing a 4-3-3/4-5-1. So I don't think the 10 comes into it at all. Not unless Farker thinks that after 2 games that this 4-3-3 is not going to work. But how can you judge something like that after 2 games? It worked fine against Everton. It just so happens that Arsenal's a lot better. That's all it comes down to. Don't get me wrong. Leeds didn't perform at the level that they played against Everton against Arsenal. Nowhere near it. Arsenal's levels were damn high, but Leeds dropped their levels, and I have no idea why. I don't know if they were nervous, don't know if they were concerned, worried that they were walking on eggshells if they make a mistake, because they were against better quality. I don't know. Only the players themselves and Farker have the answer for that. So for me, I think the club has to really push the boat out, get these 3 in, and if you get these 3 in, that then is a very good window, because you've got increased squad depth, probably an increase in quality once these boys have had time to adapt to the new club, new country, new surroundings, for a lot of them. And there's a real chance that if we perform the way we performed against Everton, if we do that against, your West Hams, your Wolves, your Sunderlands, your Burnleys, your Brentfords, and then maybe even clubs like Fulham and Bournemouth and Crystal Palace, the teams that are expected to be in the middle. If you can put that kind of performance in against those, like you put in against Everton, we have a bloody good chance of staying up this season. But only if you can put in those kind of levels. Games against Arsenal and Liverpool and Man City and Chelsea are not going to define our season. But players against those will. Matches against those will, without a doubt. Against these other ones that are going to finish either at middle or bottom half, those are the ones we have to look to try and win. And then just try and hold out against the bigger, you know, the bigger squads, you know, or so-called better squads. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but you know, I just wanted to kind of bring all this up because it has been a big talking point over these last couple of days from a lot of content creators. I'll leave it at that, folks. Another long video, a bit of a ranty one again. I do apologise. I'm hopeful I won't be so ranty once the transfer window ends and we've ended up bringing in 2 or 3 more, you know, good players, and hopefully a couple of results go our way as well. That'd be really nice. But yeah, big thanks for watching, everyone. I am hopeful to be a bit more positive in the next few videos once a bit more transfer activity happens. All being well. But enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for watching. Please give the video a like, and do please hit the subscribe button as well. I'd really appreciate it. It really does help me. In the meantime, have a good one. See you next time. Bye for now.